was in those moments that Sophia first fell in love with music. However, her life was not one that easily welcomed dreams. Her parents, hard-working and practical, believed in careers that provided stability. Music is beautiful, Sophia, her mother often said, but it's not a future. Still, Sophia couldn't let go of the piano. She taught herself on an old keyboard her grandmother gave her, practicing late into the night when the world was quiet. Every note she played was a whisper of rebellion against the life that was expected of her. At 16, she stumbled upon a small music competition in her town. The prize was a scholarship to a prestigious music school. It felt like fate. Without telling anyone, she signed up, pouring every spare moment into perfecting her performance. The night of the competition, she stepped onto the stage, her hands trembling. As she played, she let herself be carried away by the music, forgetting the audience, the fear, everything but the sound of her own soul speaking. When she finished, the silence that followed felt eternal. Then, applause erupted. She had won. But her victory was bittersweet. When she told her parents, they didn't celebrate. "This is not practical, Sophia," her father said. "We can't afford for you to chase a dream that might never come true." Heartbroken but undeterred, Sophia made a choice. She took the scholarship and left home, stepping into a world where she knew no one but the music that had always been her companion. The music school was intense, filled with students who had been trained by the best since childhood. There were moments she doubted herself, moments she felt like an outsider. But every time she sat in front of a piano, she remembered why she was there. She worked harder than ever, practicing for hours, taking extra lessons, absorbing everything she could. And slowly, she improved. She began composing her own pieces, pouring her experiences, struggles, and dreams into them. Music wasn't just something she played, it was her voice. Years later, Sophia stood on the stage of an international concert hall, the same nervous excitement bubbling inside her as it had at that small town competition. As her fingers touched the keys, she let the music flow, telling the story of a girl who had dared to dream. That night, as the audience rose in thunderous applause, Sophia knew she had proven something not just to the world, but to herself. She had followed the symphony of her dreams, and it had led her home. The melody of destiny. In the heart of a bustling city, where the streets never slept and the lights never dimmed, a girl named Aria lived in a small apartment with her mother. Music was not just a part of her life, it was her very essence. Ever since she was a child, she had been drawn to melodies, hearing symphonies in the ordinary sounds of daily life, the rhythm of rain tapping against the window, the hum of the subway, the laughter of strangers blending into a chorus of life. Aria's mother, a single parent who worked tirelessly to make ends meet, supported her daughter's passion but worried about its practicality. "Music is beautiful, Aria, but it doesn't always feed you," she would say. Yet, Aria could not imagine a life without it. One day, while wandering through a flea market, she stumbled upon an old, weathered violin. It was scratched and missing a string, but something about it spoke to her. She used the little money she had saved from tutoring neighborhood kids to buy it, determined to bring it back to life. That night, she cleaned it, rest-wrung it, and, with trembling hands, drew the bow across the strings. A haunting yet beautiful note filled the air. From that moment, Aria knew she had found her voice. With no formal lessons, she taught herself by watching videos and mimicking performances she found online. She played on street corners, in subway stations, anywhere she could share her music. Passers-by would pause, captivated by the raw emotion in her playing. Some dropped coins into her open violin case, while others simply stood, listening, lost in the melodies she created. One evening, a renowned music professor happened to hear her playing outside a cafe. Moved by her talent, he introduced himself and invited her to audition for a scholarship at a prestigious conservatory. Arya's heart pounded with excitement and fear. Was she ready? Was she good enough? Her mother, seeing the rare opportunity, urged her to take the leap. You've been given a chance, Arya. Take it and make them listen. The day of the audition arrived. Arya walked onto the stage, her fingers gripping the violin tightly. The judges sat before her, impassive, waiting. She closed her eyes and let the music take over. She played as if telling her life story, the struggles, the hopes, the dreams. When she finished, silence hung in the air before a quiet murmur of approval spread through the room. Days later, the acceptance letter arrived. Arya had won the scholarship. At the conservatory, she trained rigorously, honing her skills and learning the intricacies of composition and performance. But she never forgot the streets that had shaped her music. Inspired by her journey, she started composing pieces that blended classical techniques with the raw, unfiltered soul of street music. Years later, Arya stood on the grand stage of an international concert hall, her violin tucked under her chin. The crowd waited in anticipation. As she played, she poured every piece of her journey into the music, weaving a melody that transcended language and borders. Her mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, watching the little girl who once played in the subway now perform for the world. When the final note resonated through the hall, a standing ovation erupted. Arya bowed, her heart full, knowing she had not just followed her dream, she had composed it into reality. And in that moment, she understood, music had never been just a dream. It had been her destiny all along. The melody of perseverance. Ethan had always been fascinated by the guitar. As a child, he would watch street musicians perform, captivated by the way their fingers danced across the strings, creating melodies that spoke to the heart. It was in those moments that Ethan knew music was his calling. However, his upbringing did not nurture such dreams. His father, a factory worker, and his mother, a seamstress, believed in stable careers. Music is a pastime, Ethan, his father often said. It won't put food on the table. But Ethan couldn't silence the melodies inside him. With no money for lessons, he borrowed an old guitar from a neighbor and spent nights teaching himself, watching tutorials on a borrowed laptop. He played until his fingers were sore, practicing every chord, every strum, determined to master the instrument. At 17, he heard about a citywide music competition. The winner would receive a scholarship to a prestigious music academy. It felt like destiny. Without telling his parents, he signed up and dedicated every free moment to preparing. The night of the competition, as he stepped onto the stage, nerves gripped him. But as he strummed the first note, everything else faded. He poured his heart into his performance, letting the music tell his story. When he finished, there was a moment of silence, then thunderous applause. He had won. But his victory came with challenges. When he told his parents, their reaction was not one of joy. "Ethan, this is unrealistic," his mother said. "We can't afford for you to chase an uncertain dream." Heartbroken but resolute, Ethan made a choice. He took the scholarship and left home, stepping into a world where he knew no one but the music that had always been with him. The academy was filled with students who had years of formal training. There were days he felt out of place, doubting his talent. But he refused to give up. He practiced relentlessly, took extra lessons, and pushed himself beyond his limits. Over time, he improved. He started composing his own songs, pouring his struggles, hopes, and dreams into them. Music wasn't just something he played, it was his soul speaking. He performed at small venues, then larger ones, slowly building a name for himself. Years later, Ethan stood on the stage of a renowned music festival, the same nervous excitement bubbling inside him as it had at that city competition. As his fingers danced across the guitar strings, he told the story of a boy who had dared to dream despite all odds. That night, as the crowd erupted in applause, Ethan knew he had proven something not just to the world, but to himself. He had followed the melody of perseverance, and it had led him home. The Symphony of Dreams. In a quiet town nestled between rolling green hills, there lived a boy named Elias. From the moment he could hear, the world spoke to him through music. The rustling leaves in the trees, the rhythmic drip of rain on his window pane, and the gentle hum of the river near his home all wove together into a melody only he could hear. Elias's parents were hard-working farmers who spent their days tending to the land, but Elias was different. While his family spoke of harvests and seasons, he spoke of harmonies and chords. His father often reminded him, "Music is beautiful, Elias, but it won't fill your stomach." His mother, however, saw the fire in her son's eyes and whispered, "Follow your song." One day, while exploring the attic, Elias found an old guitar covered in dust. It had only 3 strings, but to him, it was the most precious treasure he had ever seen. He spent hours plucking the strings, discovering sounds, and creating melodies. His mother, seeing his passion, saved every spare coin she could to buy him a full set of strings. With time, Elias became the town's street musician. He played in the market square, in the fields, and by the river, where he felt most inspired. People began to notice the boy with the guitar, and whispers of his talent spread. One evening, a traveling composer named Mr. Beaumont passed through town. Hearing Elias play, he was captivated by the raw emotion in the boy's melodies. He approached Elias and asked, "Where did you learn to play like this?" Elias smiled. "The wind taught me. The rain helped. The earth sang along." Impressed, Mr. Beaumont invited Elias to the city to study music. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it meant leaving behind his home, his family, and the comfort of the familiar. His father was hesitant. "This is not the life we know," he said. But his mother took Elias's hands in hers and whispered once more, "Follow your song." With her blessing, Elias packed his guitar and set off for the city. There, he faced challenges he had never imagined. He learned music theory, composition, and technique, but he struggled with the rigid structure of formal education. The notes on the pages felt cold compared to the living melodies he had always known. One night, feeling lost, Elias wandered the city streets and found himself in a small park where a group of musicians played freely, without sheet music, just feeling the music. He joined them, and for the first time in months, he felt alive again. Realizing that music was not meant to be confined but to be felt, Elias began composing pieces that blended his natural instincts with what he had learned. He wrote symphonies inspired by the river, sonatas that echoed the rustling leaves, and ballads as warm as his mother's embrace. Years later, Elias stood on the grand stage of the city's most prestigious concert hall. His father and mother sat in the audience, their eyes filled with pride. As Elias played his original composition, the Symphony of Dreams, the entire hall fell silent, listening to the music that told his story. When the final note rang out, the crowd erupted into applause. Elias bowed, knowing he had not just played a song, he had played his soul. And at that moment, he understood, music had always been his path, his purpose, and his greatest gift.